Hi, I'm Stacy from the blog thefromscratchfarmhouse.com, and today I'm going to be showing you how I prep a month's worth of breakfast for our family of 9. I recently mentioned on Instagram that I do this and I received a ton of questions, so I figured it would just be easiest to create a video showing you exactly how I do it. Now I do want to mention that I have created a step-by-step guide for myself to make it easy so I can just flow from one thing to the next for the breakfast that I'm creating. Now I've also created a spreadsheet that calculates the exact measurements that I need based on how many servings of that particular meal I'm making for the month. So this does make it easier for me, although you can create this for yourself based on the methods that I'm going to show you today. However, if you want my exact steps and that spreadsheet, which will calculate exactly how much you need of everything for your size family, I will leave a link in the description for you to purchase that. Also, last night I did a little prep work to make sure I was prepared for my baking day today. It probably took me about an hour last night to get everything set for today, and mostly that involves prepping the sourdough ingredients that needed to sit overnight, as well as starting the yogurt in the Instant Pot so it can be ready for today. Okay, let's get started. For this month's breakfast, we will be making breakfast sandwiches, overnight oats, yogurt parfaits, instant oats, breakfast burritos, baked oatmeal, strawberry muffins and applesauce, and pancakes and bacon. Now, even if there are meals in this list that your family doesn't eat, my hope is that you will gain some inspiration as I go through this as to how to adapt these methods for your own recipes. These recipes do include both gluten and dairy, but I have included suggestions for making them gluten and dairy-free on the last page of my written instruction manual. Let's begin by setting out a stick of butter to soften if you keep your butter in the fridge. If you have yours on the counter, you're good to go. First up, we are making parfaits. I made the yogurt last night, so it is ready to go this morning. Then, to 8-ounce jars, spoon in a few scoops of yogurt, layering it with fruit. I like to do a layer of yogurt, a layer of fruit, a second layer of yogurt, and top with fruit. Leave a little room at the top for adding the granola that we will be making later. Wipe the rim of each jar, and then cap them with a lid and place them in the fridge. Okay, a quick side note on the parfaits. You may notice I only plan out parfaits for the first 2 weeks of the month, and then I have an alternative breakfast for the last 2 weeks of the month. And this is simply because the parfaits will only last 2 weeks in the fridge. Now we will make the sourdough English muffins for our breakfast sandwiches. I'm going to turn the dough that I made last night out onto a floured surface and knead, mixing in a little flour if needed until it is no longer super sticky. Mostly you need it to be able to pull up from the counter after you roll it out and keep its shape, but don't add any flour beyond that point. Roll out the dough until it is 1 inch thick. Cut out the number needed for your family using 3-inch circles and place them on parchment paper lined baking sheets sprinkled with a 1/4 cup of cornmeal on each. Sprinkle a little cornmeal on the tops and cover with a lightweight towel or plastic wrap. Set a timer for 1 hour to let rise and preheat the oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. While the English muffins are rising, we will make the pancakes. To the pancake batter that you prepped last night, add the melted butter, salt, vanilla, and baking soda. Then mix well. Next, add the milk and beaten eggs and mix once more. Never add cold milk and eggs to melted butter without fully incorporating it, as it will harden back up and you won't be able to mix it back in very well. This is a mistake I have made more often than I should admit. To cook the pancakes, put some butter in your heated pan. Pour in your pancake batter and let cook until bubbles stop popping to the surface, then flip and cook until done. Set them aside to cool as they are cooked. I have found that if you're going to be freezing these, you don't want them really soft and moist like you might make them if you're eating them right then, or they will be harder to reheat without them getting soggy. When the timer for the English muffins goes off, place them in the preheated oven. Bake for 12 minutes at 350 or until the center reaches 200 degrees Fahrenheit. Then, as the English muffins come out of the oven, toast them briefly in a stovetop skillet until just slightly browned on each side. If you are still flipping pancakes, you can just do them right alongside your pancakes. Then, set them aside to cool. While the pancakes and English muffins cool, you're going to make your breakfast sandwich eggs. This is an optional step. My family has decided that they don't like the taste of reheated eggs, so maybe try a few and see what you think. If you do want eggs, this method works pretty well. For each 9 by 13 pan of eggs that you need, grease the pan, add 12 eggs, 2 tablespoons of milk, and whisk well. Season to taste. Bake for 15 minutes at 350 or just until the top looks set. Don't overcook these. Then slice the pans of eggs into 3-inch squares and move them promptly from the pans to cool. While the eggs are cooking, let's mix up our ground pork with the seasonings for our breakfast sausage patties. If you don't have the spreadsheet, the recipe is linked below. Mix well with a hand or stand mixer. Divide into 2-ounce balls. Smash down into 3-inch circles, depressing the center a little more than the edges with your thumb or a measuring cup. Cook the patties in a greased skillet about 2 to 3 minutes per side or until cooked through. Set aside and let cool. After they are cooled, refrigerate until assembling the breakfast sandwiches. In the same large mixing bowl as before, repeat the process of mixing ground pork with seasonings, this time according to the amounts needed for your breakfast burritos. Cook the ground sausage in a skillet, chopping and stirring until cooked through. After cooled, refrigerate until assembling the breakfast burritos. To the same large skillet that you just cooked your sausage, add the number of eggs that you need to scramble. Cook just until no longer runny, and then remove from the pan and let cool. Now that the pancakes are cooled, we will flash freeze them briefly before packaging them for the freezer. To do this, lay them out on parchment paper covered baking sheets and place in the freezer. As they harden, add them to freezer bags or a freezer-safe container. If you don't have the freezer space to do this, you'll just need to allow time to thaw them completely before reheating, as they will stick together if not flash frozen. Also, it's helpful to freeze them in portion sizes for your family. Disposable foil pans work really well for large quantities. Next, on a large parchment paper-lined baking sheet, add the amount of frozen Southern-style hash browns that you need for your breakfast burritos. Bake at 350 for about 20 minutes, turning once halfway through. Remove the pan from the oven and let cool. While your hash browns cool, slice the number of cheese slices that you need for your breakfast sandwiches. Now let's assemble the breakfast sandwiches. Make an assembly line for efficiency. This is a good job for kids to do too. First, slice an English muffin, butter both sides, add a meat patty, add an egg patty if you chose to make them, and a slice of cheese. Close the sandwich and then wrap the sandwich well in freezer paper or foil, depending on how you plan to reheat them. If you will be using a microwave, freezer paper is easy to remove. If you plan to use an oven, foil keeps them together nicely. Then place them in an airtight freezer bag or container and freeze. Now let's cook the bacon. Line your baking sheet with foil and lay out slices so that they touch but don't overlap. Bake at 350 until cooked through, about 25 minutes. Don't make them too crispy or they won't reheat well. Remove to a paper towel lined plate to cool and continue to cook additional sheets of bacon until you have the number that you need. While the bacon is cooking, let's put together the breakfast burritos. First, shred the correct amount of cheese. Then mix together your eggs, breakfast sausage, peppers if you choose, shredded cheese, and hash browns in a large bowl. Get out your pre-made tortillas, then start scooping 1/3 cup of the filling into each tortilla, folding and wrapping in foil. Then place the foil-wrapped burritos in an airtight freezer bag or container and freeze. Next, set out the number of jars you need for overnight oats. To each 8-ounce jar, which is a kid-sized serving, add 1/3 cup of old-fashioned oats, 1 heaping teaspoon chia seeds, 1 heaping tablespoon shredded coconut, 1 tablespoon brown sugar packed, and then for adult-sized portions, simply double these amounts and use 16-ounce jars. Shake lightly to mix. There is a printable card included with my month of breakfast instructions that tell how to finish preparing the overnight oats the night before serving. The night before prep includes adding 1/2 cup of milk, 2 tablespoons frozen fruit, 2 tablespoons cream, and 1/4 teaspoon of vanilla. Then give it a little shake before refrigerating overnight. Alright, up next is creamy instant oats. First, get out the number of 8-ounce jars that you will need. Then, in a food processor or blender, add 1/2 of the total amount of oats you will need. Pulse the oats until evenly broken into smaller pieces, but not to the point of looking like flour. Then, in a large bowl, combine the ingredients listed on the spreadsheet, adding in the pulsed oats. If you don't have the spreadsheet, the recipe is 1/4 of the number of servings in cups of quick oats blended. So for 36 servings, I did 9 cups in the blender, and an equal amount of quick oats, not blended. Mix those together in a large bowl, Then add 1 to 2 tablespoons of brown sugar per serving and 1 tablespoon of powdered milk per serving. With a few calculations, you can figure out what a bulk batch would be for your family. I find this mixes up best by hand. Then add a heaping half cup of the mixture to each jar. Put a lid on each jar for storage and keep it somewhere handy. I also like to keep these jars near containers of toppings that my kids like. Craisins or other dried fruit are some of our favorites. I think you are going to love the creamy instant oats. I know they sound simple, but they're actually a favorite around here now. I think part of the fun for the kids is that they're similar to those packets you'd buy at the store, but without all of the added ingredients. Then to serve, they're so simple. You just add 6 ounces of hot or boiling water. We just use our Keurig for this, but if you don't have a Keurig or some sort of hot water dispenser, you can just fill up a tea kettle with hot water and then add water to each of the cups. Put the lids on and let sit for a few minutes while they cook, and then they're good to go. Okay, time to whip up some muffins. You will love this quick method. Just add all of the ingredients except the things you don't want pureed, such as fruit, nuts, or chocolate chips, to a blender. Blend until smooth. Then remove the blade and add the remaining ingredients. Mix well and pour into cupcake sheets lined with liners or greased well. Here I am making strawberry muffins. I will leave the link to the recipes of some of my favorite breakfast muffins in the description below. While the muffins are cooking, let's mix up the ingredients for the best baked oatmeal. Due to the large amount, mix together 1 pan at a time, then pour into the number of 9 by 13 pans needed for your family, each lined with parchment paper or greased very well. Okay, time to make that granola to go with those parfaits we made earlier. Turn the oven to broil to preheat. In a large bowl, combine the dry ingredients. Then heat up the wet ingredients, cinnamon, and salt in a saucepan on low until melted and combined. Add the wet mixture to the bowl slowly while mixing to combine. Stir until all of the ingredients appear wet. Then transfer the mixture to a parchment paper-lined baking pan. Place the pan of granola under the broiler just long enough for it to start to brown. Pull it out, stir, and repeat 3 more times. Do not look away as it will burn quickly. After all of the granola is done, set it aside to cool. After it is cool, I like to portion the granola into 1/4 cup servings and separate into snack-sized plastic or reusable food bags. Place these in your breakfast prep area where it will be convenient for your family to grab on parfait days. Next, line a baking sheet with parchment paper. Lay out your now cooked bacon in a single layer so that they don't touch. After the baking sheet is full, place another sheet of parchment paper on top and then lay out another layer of bacon. Repeat this process until all of the cooked bacon is in the stack. Place 1 final piece of parchment paper on top. Then place the whole baking sheet in your freezer to flash freeze. At this point, you can also place your now cooled muffins in freezer bags or a freezer-safe container, remove as much air as possible, and freeze. Then cut up your pans of baked oatmeal into 3 by 3 squares. Place the squares in Ziploc freezer bags or a freezer-safe container, remove as much air as possible, and freeze. The last thing we need to do is to prepare the applesauce. Now you could just have a jar of applesauce ready to be pulled out for these days, but I really like to separate it into portions ahead of time. This means we don't have to get out bowls or fight over who got more, and it's very grab and go for the little ones. I'm using 4-ounce canning jars with reusable lids. Both were just purchased from Walmart.com. Finally, you can now remove the individually frozen pieces of bacon and transfer them to quart or gallon-sized Ziploc freezer bags or a freezer-safe container and return to the freezer. And that's it, you did it. You now have a whole month of nourishing breakfasts for your family that will need very little, if any, prep. Thank you so much for baking along with me today, and I hope you found this helpful. If you try this method of prepping your breakfast a month at a time, please reach out and tell me how it went. I'd love to hear if this method works for your family as well as it does for ours. Also, don't forget to subscribe for more videos on homesteading, homeschooling, food from scratch, and creating a handmade home.